Welcome to Paul Champlina's Talking Property channel. Hi, it's Paul Champlina here. I am pleased to say I have my special guest, Steve Wayne. How are you, Steve?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for coming in. Today we're going to talk about picking the right letting agent and being a landlord in 2025. Steve is both, aren't you, Steve?
Yep, being a letting agent for 21 years and a landlord pretty much the same sort of time.
And you don't look a day over 35.
I'll take that.
You take that all day long. So look, Steve, you and I go back a long way. I remember when you set your business up 21 years ago. We used to have offices opposite when I was running Landlord Action in another office building. Tell me about your journey.
So obviously I opened a business when I was 22 years old.
And why did you become a letting agent?
Well, it was more
An agent.
The estate agent, letting agent. When we started, neither of us had actually done lettings before. We'd been on the sales side. And I took the letting side and Ben took the sales side. And it was just a case of, lettings is a really easy business, but estate agents and letting agents do really make it look really hard. And it's not. It's just about matching the right people and, most importantly, using your gut and making sure that you've put people into a property, but you'd be comfortable putting into your own property.
But presumably 21 years ago, there was a lot less compliance and regulation.
There was no compliance. People used to come in with pages and pages of documents, like you'd bring in your 6 months bank statements and that could be 100 pages. People would bring in their pay slips, people would bring in all sorts of things. And the reality is you couldn't really verify it. So the world's changed massively and really for the better. But what you did get back then is a lot more honesty from people. People were a lot more transparent, and if they had a problem, they talked to you about it. Whereas nowadays you get people who try and use technology to pull the wool over your eyes.
Right, okay. And it's how to actually point out where that technology is going, and can you spot out if there's anything untoward?
100%. It's so easy now if you wanted to fake pay slips, to fake bank statements, but obviously the referencing companies have got quite good, and you've got open banking now.
Yeah, which makes
if you use, it's like with everything in life. If you use a cheap letting agent, you're going to get a cheap service. If you use a proper company who care and want to do the right things, you don't have problems.
And one thing I know, because look, I've seen your journey, because obviously I remember when you started out, and when you started, you weren't even shaving. So
I couldn't do this.
Congratulations, right? 21 years later. But your company's called Benjamin Stevens. You've got, how many offices have you got?
2 offices.
You've got 2 offices. Yeah. So how different is, you've touched on it, how different is it now from being a letting agent than what it was 21 years ago, even 5 or 10 years ago?
The business has changed, but actually the actual job itself is exactly the same. Showing people properties, talking to people, getting them booked in. That side of thing hasn't changed. Tech's made it easier, but that's not changed. But the legalities of it has changed. There's always something new, there's always something happening. And actually, a letting agent can't just bury their head in the sand and just rent a property and not do all the extra bits. Because actually, it's our job, as well as looking after the landlord, to look after the tenants and make sure the property is safe.
But how do you keep your staff motivated? How many staff do you have?
Altogether in a group, there's 40 of us.
Right. So that's a big group. How do you keep them motivated and trained and on point to become a better letting agent? Because as a landlord, there's 5-10 letting agents to the high street. Who do you pick? Why should they pick Benjamin Stevens or another agency? So
look, we've been really lucky that we've built a very close-knit group of people. My lettings team and property management team, we sort of run it as one group. Some of the girls have been with me 15 years, 14 years. Like the newbies have been with me 7 and 8 years. So what they've got is they understand the company and they want to be with a company that does the right things the right way. So we've just joined Property Mark, which is, the industry standard, where it does training and does conferences. And just so they're constantly learning, we're a member of the Guild of Property Professionals. I sit on the NAC, which is National Advisory Committee. And it's about, with estate agency, it's interesting. So I go to an estate agency dinner where you get a bunch of estate agents and just talk about our problems. You'd think there'd be hundreds of people, and there's not. And actually, the problem with the industry is you get a lot of people who just don't care about what's going on outside their four walls. And actually, we've really embraced, some of my staff hate it, but it's what we do as a company. We learn, we train, we're always doing something new. There's always, great, new idea or a new system. But actually, it's innovation. Actually, it's always putting our customers first and also making the staff's lives easier. But, it's amazing how our industry, you drive down sometimes and you see these shops and they're like, oh, that must be empty. And there's an estate agent inside.
Yeah, I know, I've seen that.
And there's so many who just...
You don't know how they're surviving.
How are you marketing yourself?
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we are and what we've become. We've become information givers and marketers.
And use social media, obviously.
Yes, we're massive on social media.
Yeah.
But if you don't go and push yourself and learn, and the problem with the industry is a lot of people are falling behind. They just don't want to fall into that category.
As a landlord, what should I be looking at with a letting agent? How do I do my due diligence? What will influence my decision to go with your company rather than another company?
Okay. If I call someone and they don't call me back for 3 days, they're gone. If I email someone and they're not emailing me back within an hour and a half, 2 hours, not interested. I want someone who's contactable and quick. If I've got a problem with a property where there's a leak or an issue, I don't want to have to be chasing the letting agent. I want to make sure that they're on Rightmove, they're on Zoopla. And I know people are, oh, you don't need to be on all of them. But you want to make sure that the agent's spending money.
And they're marketing your property.
They're marketing. And it's amazing. You know, I used to have arguments with my staff and I'm like, letting a rental property, and if you went on Rightmove, you'd see this even now. Lettings properties are not marketed the same as sales.
No, that's right.
You know, you see these sales, you see it on Instagram and LinkedIn, all these phenomenal tours. You don't see them for lettings.
No, you don't.
One of my guys yesterday did the most phenomenal video on a 2-bedroom flat in Mill Hill for £2,000 a month. It was brilliant. And actually what I said to him is, I don't know why we're doing this for this flat. I'm going to rent it in a day. Okay, you're not doing it necessarily for this property, but you're showing people how we put ourselves out there.
Showcasing.
And actually, have a look on Rightmove, see how they're doing. Are they doing quick rubbish photos, you know, with their finger in the middle of a photo? Are they taking pictures of a toilet and you can see the reflection? Actually, have an agent that actually cares about how they present their properties, and actually that shows you how they're going to present and look after you.
You know, the 3 most common questions a landlord asks an agent is, how much will you get for it? When can you get for it? And what do you charge?
Yeah.
I mean, they're the 3 most common, and obviously they're price driven. But how do you know that that agent actually cares? Or you're not just a number of one of other landlords.
It's down to when you go and meet, you know, I hear so many people who are like, oh, we've got a property, we're going to go down there, pick up the keys from there, and you don't actually ever meet the landlord. Well, actually, why don't you jump on a quick Zoom with the agent? You know, for me, I love meeting people face to face. I feel I spend most of my day now outside the office, meeting people, networking, getting to build relationships. And it should be the same with your letting agent.
Great.
You need to go out and meet them. Even if you do it on a Zoom, you can see their facial expressions, you can see how they interact with you. And you've got to, you know, take your time. Like, the problem is with the whole industry is, what's your fee? Oh, someone else will do it for half.
Yeah.
Well, go there.
Yeah.
And you'll come back, because you always do. You know, the amount of landlords I meet and they're like telling me about this problem and that problem. Over the years, you know, we've done business. I don't think I've ever given you a case which is one of my tenants I put in. It's only ever a landlord who's gone somewhere else and then coming back, I need help. And I'm like, well, speak to Paul.
We should be problem solvers, shouldn't you?
Well, that's a job of a letting agent. But actually, you should be one step ahead of that. You should be stopping problems before they even occur. And actually, if you get a deal with a good letting agent, you don't have the problems. We rent 250, 300 properties a year. We have such few problems because we are so like, if you try and get a tenant through Louisa, God help you, you know, she treats every property, she runs our whole lettings department, she treats every property as if it was mine. And actually, if you have that way and that behaviour, but you're actually, where it's not about the money, it's about the service, and actually for us, we'd rather walk away from a deal than try and put a bad tenant in. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a lot of agents, and I've heard them, and I've spoken to them, I've met them, who don't care. They just don't care. They just want their fee. And that, and unfortunately, that comes down from the director to the letting manager to the negotiator. And if they've all got that, it's all about money, 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 you know, it always goes backwards. Yeah,
that's a really good point. I mean, often thing that I get, the amount of complaints that we hear about letting agents is rife. You know, you've got 25, 26,000 letting agents. I represent the property redress scheme. You know, we deal with letting agent member complaints. I've heard, you know, the most common complaint that we get about agents is that they're lazy.
Yeah.
Is that I've paid for full management service and they've dropped me like a hot potato. I only had a let only. You know, what advice would you give to a landlord relating to that and to try and change that perception?
The problem is, if you spin it round the other way, letting agents aren't paid particularly well.
No,
so a letting agent has to do a hell of a lot of work to make good money.
Yeah.
You know, and there's almost like a problem in the whole industry, but that's probably for another day. But for a landlord, don't try and scrimp and save 1 or 2% and try and do let only. And
over 12 months, it's peanuts.
It's nothing. You know, like for us, we charge we've made it such a small difference between let only and fully managed but actually you'd be silly to just do let only. And you're running it as a business. You wouldn't go and buy...
And you can offset it against tax.
So let's look at it this way. An average flat is the same price as a Ferrari. You don't take your Ferrari down to a dodgy dealer down a corner to give your service and to replace, your exhaust. You wouldn't do that with a Ferrari. So why on earth are people doing it with their properties?
Really good example.
It blows my mind. On average, our average property would be a one-bedroom flat. It's going to be worth around here at least £250,000. And people are trying to argue with me over £150.
I know.
Your property...
Very small-minded.
Unfortunately... Lettings is a really easy business, and it's created a lot of people who have become very wealthy. But I speak to people who have got, and these aren't people with 1 or 2, these people with 20 and 30, and they're tight as anything. And the problem is they're only costing themselves money. We do block management, and the amount of people that moan about their service charges, I'm like, you do realise that's all being spent on your block. And actually, the best thing I can do is I can help your block look better, and suddenly your flat is worth more money. But people are a little bit, they just want to make money, I was talking about it earlier. People want to make money now. Everyone's got this obsession with being an overnight success, a multimillionaire today. Nothing is today.
Buy-to-let is long-term, isn't it?
You have to, and I think a lot of problem is a lot of landlords don't have a strategy. They go, I want to buy-to-let. Why? I always say to people when I talk to them, why do you want to buy-to-let? What are you trying to achieve? For me as a landlord, it's about a legacy. I've got X amount of properties which are in a company which will go to my children. Those kids will never have to worry about money. I've got them on repayment. That money never comes back to me. I just use it to buy. That's my strategy. I have a very clear plan of what I'm trying to do. But actually, you speak to a lot of landlords, they're like, I might keep it for years. Don't know.
I mean, for CGT as well.
There's a lot of accidental landlords around. And I think you really need to think as a landlord, why am I doing this? What am I trying to achieve?
And I think that's part of the problem. And I do that with my landlord training. No landlords have any business plans or exit strategies, which is part of the problem as well. Let me ask you this question, because you are a landlord and you are a letting agent, so you're really qualified to answer this question. What's your view on landlords now in 2025 self-managing their properties, or maybe a new landlord in 2025?
I think you're a little bit mad. It's unnecessary. And I have the same conversation with block management, who self-manage. There is so much going on out there. Why on earth do you want the stress of needing to keep up to date? Yes, you should know, but actually let someone else do it for you. An average management fee to a letting fee is an extra maybe 4 or 5%. When you look at that over a course of over a year or 10 years, it's no money, and to put yourself under that pressure and that stress. I remember I had a landlord when I was younger, it always used to make me laugh. He phones me up, he goes, I haven't had my rent for 6 months. I'm like, all right, when did you notice? He goes, yesterday. I go, why are you calling me today? And I phoned up the tenants, and they laughed, and they dropped the keys back the next morning. And they've got away with 6 months of not paying the rent because the landlord was so wealthy he never checked that account. I'm like, let me tell you, that landlord we still manage for him now. Right. And I'm like, even just that alone, checking the rents in. I'm guilty. My company look after my properties, but I let the rent come into my account. And sometimes I don't check it because it's there,
Because you're driving your Ferrari.
Well, I wish. I wish. But sometimes you can go 4 weeks, 5 weeks without checking it. And I go back and I check, and I'm in a rhythm now. But it's so easy when you've got so much going on. Even just forget that. Well, how about forgetting to renew your gas safety? Most landlords, you say to them, when's your EPC due next? I don't know. These small and basic things.
I've served the wrong right to rent guide.
Well, that's even a whole nother level of problems. But even the small things, you can easily forget those dates. And do you know what? If an EPC runs out of date, it's not the end of the world. But it's not the end of the world until you have a problem tenant and you want to try and get them out, and they're like, well, this was out of date and that was out of date. Tenants very easily can throw things straight back at you. I remember when we first opened, I had a landlord who was horrendous, and the tenant wasn't paying the rent because he wouldn't fix the oven, and he wouldn't fix the oven because they wouldn't pay it, and he ended up going to court, and it came out that their oven broke on just before Christmas. And when the tenant told the judge the story about not having food over Christmas, they didn't have a working oven, he sided on their side.
Don't blame him.
And then there was something that the landlord had self-managed, but he'd asked me as a favour to go with him to court, which at the time we were new, so we tried to keep everyone happy. And he'd served something wrong because he'd spelt her name wrong. And the smallest things, as you know, in court, the judge will just throw out.
Yeah.
So when people think about at least if you self-manage, you give it to a dodgy agent, at least you can blame them if they haven't done it right. But why would you want to go through all of that?
It's extra, especially when you're a landlord, you're working full-time as well. So let me ask you this question. Tenants, renters. It's the hardest time to ever be a renter. Do we not agree in 2025?
Yeah, it's horrendous.
So tell us some of the experience you're seeing, applicant levels, the desperation of renters trying to find properties.
So to give you an idea, we're not the biggest agents in the world. We're a good, clean company, but we've probably got about 2,500 people looking at the moment.
Wow.
We've probably got...
How many have you got on,
we would have, at the moment, we're probably marketing 12 properties.
Are you serious?
Yeah. My letting agents have not made a phone call out to phone up. I remember when I was younger, hi, it's Steve here from Bedford Steve. Are you still looking for a property to rent? We don't do that. They just sit and we put it on Rightmove and the calls just come.
And you just open house viewings, presumably. Do you do that or not?
I don't believe in open house because it's not fair on to tenants. We try and do a block where one's got an appointment at 5, 5:10, 5:15. We give them a bit of time. This whole melee is not fair on people.
And it ends up, which is obviously stopping under renters' rights, the anti-bidding laws. That's going to stop. That's going to push rents up, though, isn't it?
I think in 21 years we've had 2 properties go over asking. We're not
really.
It's not how we want to work. It's not for us.
Well, a lot of agents go the other way, don't they?
I get that, but actually, what you're suddenly doing is your people are buying something that isn't worth what they're paying for it, and all you're doing is, we have the same thing in sales. You get a property, 10 people are fighting over it. You go to the highest bidder, and then he's like, "What the hell have I bid here?" And he pulls out. Sometimes when you try and push that environment, it doesn't help anyone. So we never were interested in that. But it's just, I've got one of the girls...
Are you saying you've got 2.5... How do you know you've got 2,500?
I've got my sister. I can tell you how many we've got, how many people...
Wow.
It's ridiculous.
For 12 properties, I can't believe that.
But people stay. They don't, some people are taking 1.5 years to move.
Yeah. So you pre-qualify them, what are their applicants for the future, effectively?
Yeah, they're sitting there in a database. And then something new comes on, it gets sent out. We don't put our properties on Rightmove or Zoopla. We'll have a week and a half where we're trying to at least service the people who are on our system first. So we don't need, if you put on a 1-bedroom flat in Edgware right now at, say, £1,200, we'd have 35 calls. You could come into my office today and you'd rent it out. So
what advice we've got? This is the chance for renters to really understand what's happening in the market. They're looking for a property. What should they be doing to put their best foot forward for the landlord, for their application, for the references, the conversation with the agent to try and get ahead?
So the first one is have everything ready. There's nothing worse than someone says, I want to take a property. You send them the link to pay their deposit and 3 days later they haven't done it. If you're going to say you're going to take something, take it, because agents won't forget that you were the guy that mucked around 2 weeks ago. If you don't want the property, just be honest. It's also, some people you wouldn't believe are so rude to us.
What, tenants?
Tenants,
What, they treat you with disdain?
A little bit, because they've been let down by so many people.
Right.
And I understand that, but actually, show us that you're, charm us as we need to charm you. I've had people in the past who I built a relationship and they kept on losing out on properties. And when something came on which I knew they wanted, I didn't call anyone. I phoned them.
Right.
We rented it, bang, done, dusted. And actually, for agents, no one walks into our office anymore. Everything's on the internet, everything's quick, fast. Well, actually, take a day out of your life, go into the agents, and they'll probably tell you about what's coming on next week.
Right.
If you start putting yourself in that, that competitive landscape where there is at the moment, where, you're going to a viewing and there's 16 people and you're like, oh, I saw her at the last viewing and I saw them at the other day. You're seeing these same people float around to each different viewing. So try and put yourself in a different situation to other people. And it's just about having all your money, make sure you know what you're doing.
How will the landscape change where landlords can't ask tenants for more than 1 month in advance? How do you see that going, Steve, as an agent and a landlord?
Look, it's hard. So you've got certain people who may have sold a house and they're not working, retired people. What are they supposed to do? I'm not sure if this is going to quite get to where the government wants to get to.
It's at amendment stage at the moment.
And I think there will be potentially amendments because there are people that don't have any referencing, want to rent, good people. Well, how are they going to rent? You're going to have to take a punt on them as a letting agent. And people, if I've got, Mr. and Mrs. Jones just sold a £4 million house, but can't pass referencing.
Well, wouldn't they just show what they've got in the bank account, proof of funds? But
your proof of funds can be here now and be gone tomorrow.
Yeah, but I think what you can do is you can't ask for more than 1 month in advance. Obviously, the tenancies are going to be 1 month tenancies. But once they've moved in, they can pay bulk monies in advance, as long as it's not demanded.
Right, so there's still a lot of how it's going to look.
Yeah.
There was also the one I heard the other day, and I know there's a lot floating around, of you won't be able to receive the first month rent until you give them the keys.
Yes.
Which is great for 99% of the country. But what about that 1% who's a crook, who turns around and goes, thanks for the keys, I'm not sending you any money?
Yeah, we've seen that before.
I think the government have sort of thrown all these ideas out there to start with, and now they're speaking to people like you who are like, well, hold on, that's not quite right.
It's practicality.
Yeah.
But also look at the student market, the overseas student market, and also vulnerable tenants. How's that going to affect them?
It's going to make a problem. So I'm not quite sure where it's looking at the moment it will get to. I think there will have to be amendments, because otherwise these people are all going to end up homeless. Or what you get, this is the other problem you then start creating is, well, if I know I'm not going to be able to rent and I'm in somewhere, I'm not moving out. You're going to have to drag me out. And we're almost creating problems which aren't there at the moment. So I think there needs to be a little bit of common sense.
I think the reality is there's going to be much more temporary accommodation crisis.
Yeah.
We've got 1.3 million people on council waiting lists. Let me ask you this. And you didn't have to be Einstein to work this out. The renters reform, renters' rights, it was all about levelling up.
Yeah.
I understand that. Tenants are paying 35-40% of their earnings.
Don't they, levelling up?
Well, it was levelling up. That was the main reason it coming in. I've talked about it non-stop, the landlord exit. I see it firsthand running landlord action, more Section 21. Section 21 ban's going to go. Use it before losing it. What are you seeing as an agent?
Fine. So everyone talks about this obsession with this landlord exit. We don't see it as much as this. All your landlords are leaving. You do speak to landlords, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to carry on." But then they want top money for their flats, which they're not getting. So they're only going to exit if it works worthwhile. People have always got I had a client come to see me the other day, and they've been renting out their house for 25 years. They started talking about CGT.
Right.
They weren't selling it anymore. They
didn't know about it until
they just hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah, no, well, it's the exit plan.
And you've got a lot of these people who've maybe owned a property for 5-10 years, where they've made 100 grand. Well, they don't want to be paying 20, 30,000 pounds out. So actually, there is this mindset: I want to get out, but it's like a bad relationship.
Yeah,
it's like supporting Spurs. You don't want to do it anymore.
You can talk being a QPR fan, Jesus, pot and kettle, mate. I think the reality. Look, I can only talk. I'm proper in the industry, and I'm on. I've got my ear to the ground. I speak to a lot of agents, and they're whacking in loads of Section 21s. I spoke to a landlord only yesterday. A landlord in Bradford. He's got 96 properties, and he wants landlord action to help him. He wants to sell them all. What does that mean? Think about the impact that's going to have to tenants.
Yes and no. Well, look, it would put the prices up. That's simple, But there are also a young breed of young investors coming into the market who have got a long-term strategy. So for everyone who wants to get out, there's other
landlords buying.
Get in.
Yeah.
And if you say to a landlord now, I can get you a same property next to yours, I've had this. Someone's turned around and go, I think I'm going to sell. Okay, it's bizarre. I've got something next to yours. How much is it, Steve? Well, it's actually on quite cheap. I might be interested in that. So this is the sentiment they want to leave, but actually, from what we're seeing, there's not that many of them who are getting out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think what's been the reason why landlords want to get out? There's been a whole plethora of reasons.
There's just so much going on. It's not fun to be a landlord anymore. It's they're being hit from absolutely every single angle. But property is still the best investment you can spend your money on.
Yeah, definitely. Steve, I want to ask this question, which I think is really, really important for landlords, but really important for letting agents. Letting agents now, especially with the Renters' Rights Bill coming, it's the biggest change in 30 years, and people don't know what's going on. Surely a decent agent, an agent like you've had a lot of landlords that have been with you for years, they've really got a duty to show the landlords, not just that they care, to keep calm during these uncertain times.
Yeah, 100%. And good letting agents like ourselves, we're putting together now a marketing plan to go out to landlords, give them information. We're going to do a landlord evening. So it's important for letting agents to get out there and just turn around to the landlords and go, breathe, we've got this for you. There's going to be nothing, we're all going to look back at this in 10 years' time and go, it wasn't as bad, because it won't be as bad.
We've had stuff in the past.
We talk about, I remember hips coming in, hips going out.
You got a dodgy hip as well, haven't you?
The tenant fee ban, things like that.
Yeah.
We can all work ourselves up. Brexit happened, COVID happened. We're all still here. We're all still going.
It's true.
And you know what? In a few years' time, it will just be part of what we do.
And landlords, you don't need to sell unless you really have to.
No, look, I think landlords only should be selling if they've got a reason. And if we go back to what I was saying before, have your plan. Why are you a landlord? What are you trying to achieve? And when do you want to sell? Have a plan to exit if that's what you want to do. But all of this, it's constant, isn't it? There'll be something else in a couple of years.
Yeah. Keep calm and carry on. I've got a question with you. So we talk about self-manage or not to self-manage, really, the reality is, as a landlord, it's very, very time consuming. I'm going to throw this out to you because I've always asked this question to an agent and no one's ever been able to answer it. How much time, I mean, obviously 6 and 12 month tenancies are going to go.
Yeah.
That we think maybe October Renters' Rights Bill might be a big bang and all come in and there's a transitional period, and Section 21 goes, which is the headline. On average, how much time does an agent fully manage? If you had to say hours and a guesstimate, a 6 month tenancy, you think about the pre-let,
Okay, so let's run through it.
Yeah,
maybe
I think it'd be really good for viewers to understand it. Yeah.
Say, for example, you're the landlord, I'm the agent. You phone me up, Steve, come have a look at the property. So I drive down to your property and have a chat with you. Let's call it an hour. You instruct me. I come round, take new pictures, do all the other bits. Come round to the office, put it on the system, put it on Rightmove. No, so we're in at 2 hours. Maybe I'll do a couple of set of viewings. Let's do, say, another 2 hours, so we're at 4 hours. Referencing an hour, all the paperwork. So probably at 6 hours before the tenant's moved in.
That's the pre-let stuff.
That's the pre-let stuff.
6 hours full pre-let. Yeah. Okay.
Then inventory, getting them moved in, keys, yada yada. Let's say another hour. Then let's go
compliance, all the compliance stuff, back office.
All sort of sits in. So So let's say we're in at 7 hours. Then every single month we check your rent, and if we do nothing else but rent collect, let's say it's 15 minutes a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So what's that? We're another 3 hours there. Yeah. But that's saying there's absolutely no problems. You haven't called me, your tenant hasn't called me, I haven't heard from you. But let's say over the course of a year, the tenant will phone me to say there's a leak. We've called them, they've missed us, we called them, we got hold of them, we told them, we called the landlord, he's not answered, we emailed the landlord. Let's say a small little leak on your tap, that's 2 hours. That's what it's probably cost us in time to sort it out. But that's if everything's perfect. Your heating's not working. I had to send someone. They thought they fixed it. They didn't fix it. Then we need to get someone else. But landlord wants free quotes on a new boiler. That's another 3 people get the quotes.
Then there's landlord and tenant disputes.
Then he's saying, "Oh, we shouldn't got that. Yeah. I want some money off because it's taken him 2 weeks to get a plumber in." So you'd be talking on average probably another 5 hours. Right. So you're probably talking about an average let
on a 6 month. What would you say?
Probably
fully managed.
12 hours. 12 to 15 hours. If you're talking for a year, I reckon 15 to 16 hours a year.
16 hours.
I think that's quite a good.
Okay. And what would that work out roughly on an hourly rate? Because I think landlords don't understand that. Because
average letting fee probably with us is probably maybe £1,500.
Yeah.
But that's okay. But that's for us to that's for us to let and manage.
Yeah, and be fully compliant.
Yeah, the management's probably £500.
Right. Okay.
I know what we pay, for all our memberships and our deposits.
Your insurances.
Our insurances.
Yeah.
It's not. We're not making there's a few of them, but you don't see a lot of estate agents who run normal estate agents work hard in their business. They're not living in £10 million houses. They're living in a nice 3-bed semi, send their kids, go on a couple of holidays. But you aren't talking, one of my friends said it to me and I love him for it because it took him 20 years to say, he's like, do you ever think you'd have been better off in another industry? He goes, you're great at what you do. He goes, you'd have made a fortune.
It's always a way, isn't it?
But unfortunately, in our industry, people aren't making, our profit margins are not 50%. So
no.
A good estate agent makes 25% margin.
Yeah. No,
so there's a lot of work that we do which
is unseen work.
Yeah.
And I say that, and I do say a lot of letting agents are unsung heroes because there's a lot of work that's been done. It's just basically picking the right one.
But there is a real the good is brilliant and the bad are awful, and actually it's not hard to tell because the good want to hold their fees and the bad will do it for 5%.
Yeah, cheap is always expensive.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you.
My pleasure.
Subscribe now to Talking Property.